Alright, grade 8, section 6.5, dividing fractions and mixed numbers. For working example number 1, we're needing to divide using diagrams. And for this first example, we're dividing 2/3 divided by 1/4. So let's take a look at what that looks like. 2/3 is our first fraction. So the first thing to do is draw a rectangle, break it into thirds, and then shade 2 of them. So this represents 2/3. And I'm going to use some color to help with this a little bit. So we've got 2/3 shaded in yellow. Now our second fraction is 1/4. So I'm actually going to draw another rectangle that's the same size as the first one, and that's important. And I'm going to break it down into quarters. So as shown here, we got 4 main sections, but I'm just going to, for reference sake, shade in this first one as well. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're dealing with the fraction 1/4. So I want 1/4 to be represented. So when you look at the question 2/3 divided by 1/4, what you're asking is, how many 1/4s fit inside 2/3? That's the question we're asking. So if we look at this and we draw a dotted line going down, don't worry about the third rectangle yet. From the end of our shaded section, if we draw a line down through the next rectangle, we see what its equivalent size is in this next rectangle. How many of these green ones fit inside here? Well, we've got 1, 2 full ones, but then this third one here, this third quarter, it's not complete. It's only a part of that. And so this third rectangle that we've got drawn here is used to figure out, well, what portion of that third one is being used on this rectangle here. So in order to figure out what size this is, we need to break this down into a common denominator situation. So we've got a 3, we've got a 4. The lowest common multiple of 3 and 4 that is common is going to be 12. So we're going to draw another rectangle, exact same size. Precision is important with this. And we're going to break that down into fourths. Well, you can carry your lines down from the middle one here, and you'll notice that there are 3 pieces that fit inside each of these rectangles. So if you were to draw it down, you would see that that line is common, that line is common, that line is common, and then that line is common. And you'll see that there's 3 that fit inside each of these quarters. So once you get that far, it's a little bit easier to see. The piece that we're actually looking at and trying to figure out what is what, we've got one whole one, we've got another whole one, it's this partial one. So really what we're looking at here to try and figure out the partial piece is this section right here. And actually I'm going to draw a box around it. What portion is this pink out of the whole thing? Well, this is 2 out of 3. So that's 2/3. We have 1 whole, 2 whole, and then this little bit is 2/3 of this rest of them. So that's that is actually our answer. It's going to be 2 wholes and then 2/3. That's our answer. Now if you wanted to, you could look at that as an improper fraction as well. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. So 8/3. And if you look at this, if you were to just shade this original part down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and each one is of size 1/3 of this quarter. So 8/3 kind of makes sense. So this means that 2 and 2/3 quarters fit inside the 2/3. And so that's the answer you're looking for. As far as filling in these notes goes, common denominator we said was 12. So that's why we broke this one down into 12. And then as I showed the calculation there, 2 and 2/3 is the same as 8/3. So that is how you go about figuring out how to divide using diagrams.